Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Aspire. Today, our guest is Prateek Panghal. He is a graduate of Harvard Business School, class of 2023. Thank you for joining us today, Prateek. I'd like to begin by asking you to starting from childhood and tell us academically what your path has been.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me here and giving me the opportunity to share snippets of my story so far. And I think academics is such a good point to start this conversation because um, it was such a core part of my journey growing up. If you've had the chance to meet any Indian family from a small town, a middle class family, you'll know academics is one of the most important things that is discussed in the household. Both my parents are teachers, so for them, academics was the way through which they would ensure I have one, a solid foundation in life, and two, a means to a better life going forward. So there was a lot of focus on kind of just spending time gaining knowledge, I would say. And for us and for me personally, that meant getting higher marks, being on top of my class, and like it was a very very results oriented approach to academics, I would say, early on in my life. I did my education in Aurangabad, which is a town in Maharashtra, up till grade 10, and then I had a very interesting 2 year experience where for grade 11 and grade 12, where I moved to Kota, which is a town in North India, which is famous for the IIT JEE coaching. So IIT was the goal. It like every decision taken for the first 15 years of my life was to make sure I get into the Indian Institute of Technology. And for that, I moved to Kota, which was the coaching hub for 2 years. And I spent 2 years there. A very, very different experience from what I had had so far. Happy to dive deeper into that. But once I kind of spent a couple of years there getting coached to get into the IIT, I did make it to IIT Delhi, where I went on to complete my chemical engineering, bachelor's in chemical engineering. But yeah, just in a nutshell, it was a very academically rigorous childhood with both my parents heavily involved. And of course, like our goal was to go ahead and, I mean, it was a collective family goal to make sure I get into the IIT. So yeah, that's how kind of education became a very important part of my upbringing.
I see. Prateek, during all this time of your upbringing, was it education for its own sake or education towards a particular goal of yours?
I think, Michael, the North Star was for my parents to make sure that I kind of leverage education as a means to escape the socioeconomic status in which we were kind of living. I think that was the underlying motivation for my parents to kind of make sure I'm well focused on uh, kind of acing education. But a more tangible goal for us was to kind of get me into IIT. IIT was, and still is for a lot of people in India, a means of kind of reaching that point in life where you're like, where my parents could be like, okay, now this guy has a safety net and he'll be good. He'll be, as they call it, set in life, right? So that was the more tangible goal of like kind of getting really good at maths and science so that I can go ahead and crack the Indian Institute of Technology entrance exam. And along the way, there were definitely topics that caught my fancy. Some were core curriculum subjects, and others were extracurricular. For example, I loved maths, and you could give me maths puzzles the entire day, and I'd be like sitting there, more than happy, kind of just playing around with numbers. But then there were some extracurricular topics which kind of caught my attention, whether it be spending time quizzing or spending time out on the sports field. So I think, and my parents were fairly encouraging of both aspects of education, that you do what you need to do to get into IIT, but there's an entirely different set of things that you need to learn, which help you build your personality. So I think both of them kind of came together to help me get to that goal of getting into IIT, and for my parents to feel a lot more comfortable about the future that I was building for myself.
Oh, wonderful. How did you settle on chemical engineering in particular?
So I must admit, it's a bit of a lucky break, I would say. When I was preparing for IIT, I was hell bent on becoming a mechanical engineer, and I wanted to get into IIT Delhi. Um, the reason being, Delhi is closer to extended family, and I had grown up in a small town. So for me, there was this part of me that wanted to stay in a big city, and what better place than the capital of India. So I did want to get into IIT Delhi, and I did want to kind of do mechanical engineering because, hey, I loved numbers, I loved playing around with parts, and I was like, yeah, that seems cool. That's something I could do long term. As it turns out, when you have millions of kids kind of vying for those very few spots, not everything is in your hand. So when I got my IIT All India rank, I unfortunately was not able to get mechanical engineering. And then that is when plan Bs and plan Cs kind of kicked in. And as I was going through the other branches, the other subjects that were available for me at IIT Delhi, chemical engineering seemed the one which was closest in terms of like the academic curriculum to mechanical. For me, getting to Delhi was as important as getting to kind of a branch that I really like in at IIT. So once I had pinned down Delhi, the next best option was chemical engineering. A lot of physics, unlike what people might assume that there's a lot of chemistry in chemical engineering. Not really. You have a lot of physics. Of course, there's chemistry, but I kind of, it landed at a sweet spot where I could see myself kind of enjoying the next 4 years. And that's exactly how it played out. So yeah, that's how I ended up picking chemical engineering at IIT Delhi.
Oh, that's wonderful. And then subsequently, after graduation, what was your first direction professionally?
I started gathering enough data points through those 4 years to be able to make a more informed decision when it finally came to getting a job. So to give you some more Indian context, there are a couple of really sought after career paths in India, I would say. As soon as you become an engineer, especially if you're going to Delhi, the two prominent paths that open up are one, hey, now you've done IIT, let's go get an MBA at an IIM, right? So let's just prepare for the IIM entrance exam called CAT. Or if you're in Delhi, if might as well prepare for the civil services exam, which kind of helps you get into the Indian administrative services or the Indian police services, right? And those options were fairly on the table because my parents thought, hey, if you can get into IIT, why not give a couple other entrance exams and then take jobs that further secure your future. These were the two options on the table. And then the third one was to kind of go ahead and do higher studies. My mom ended up getting a postdoctorate. So there was someone in the family who I could fall back on and ask how this entire journey of getting into higher studies was. That was the third option. And then the fourth was to, of course, get a job. Now, what field the job would be was open to consideration, but these were kind of broadly the options on the table. As I mean, Michael, I succumbed to peer pressure. I joined coaching to kind of prepare for the civil services exam. Soon realized I had the wrong set of motivations to do that exam, to give that exam. It's an exam that requires you to be fairly clear on why you want to be a civil servant. And I thought I was there just for the rank and the prestige and with little motivation to go all the way. So dropped off, decided not to do that. Around that time, I asked my mother, had like long discussions with her about higher studies. And she was very blunt, and I'm glad she was blunt, and said, you don't have the patience to kind of sit through and do a PhD. And I was like, I needed to learn it from someone who's done it and whose opinion I value. And after discussions with her and a few professors, I realized higher studies was not an option. About the same time, I ended up getting an internship in a company that drilled oil. So it was a core chemical engineering internship. Did I enjoy working in the field? Somewhat. Did I enjoy working on business problems? Quite a bit. And that's when I decided that around fourth year, I would keep an option to work for a chemical company open, but focus a little more on the management or the business side of things. And consulting seemed to be a great fit. I did not know what a McKinsey or a Bain or a BCG did till about I was halfway through my undergrad education. But when I did, when I spoke to some of the seniors, when I saw the way they had changed to when they came back to campus 1 year after getting placed. I mean, seeing them around in hostels in a very raw form and then seeing them like really well poised, communicating really well when they came back for the recruitment seminars. I'm like, okay, I see a very steep learning curve there, both in terms of their personality development and the way their business knowledge has gone up. And maybe that is something I would love to kind of be a part of. So there was a bit of process of elimination, and then there was some like flirting around with a couple of options in the corporate space. But luckily, I was able to narrow down on consulting being the next learning stone for me as I kind of picked a job after my undergrad.
I see. And during this time period, were there specific elements or possibly milestones which encouraged you to start considering getting an MBA or any other further training? You did mention that your mother discouraged you from getting a doctorate, but in terms of other education, what were the steps along the way to your making a decision to pursue anything else?
I think, Michael, my decision to kind of get an MBA really took shape a couple of years into my professional journey. While when I graduated from undergrad, I had the option to kind of go ahead and pursue an MBA from the IIMs. I had my interviews lined up, but I did realize that after 4 years of education at IIT, I would love to get a few more experiences under my belt before I take a pause for 2 more years and get an MBA. I wanted the MBA to be an experience that allows me to kind of reflect on what has worked in my professional journey and what has not, rather than get another degree for the sake of getting another degree, right? So I wanted there to be a gap between my undergrad and my postgrad. And I wanted that gap to be filled with multiple experiences that allowed me to kind of pause right before business school and figure out, okay, this is the industry that excites me, or these are the skill sets that I have, and these are the ones that I'm missing, and then go ahead and get them, right? So I wanted to kind of approach it a little different as compared to how I approached getting an undergrad education. But for me, the other reason of getting an MBA, I realized, was the plain and simple academic gap in my kind of skill set. My education so far was extremely heavy on the engineering side, so there was this analytical mind that I had kind of built, but there was this. I as I worked at Bain, I did realize that okay, if I'm building a financial model, of course I'm able to get it. Google is a great teacher, and so are the folks on my team. But I would love to kind of formally go and really build some of these basic skill sets. So MBA kind of fit that bill. This was Michael. Some I would say about a couple of years into my professional journey. But as time went on, say 4 or 5 years in, I realized an MBA was also a great spot to kind of go ahead and play around with my entrepreneurial ideas. I realized there were certain problems that excited me quite a bit. And those 2 years at business school could be great for me to go ahead, build something, test it out, and see if that's something I wanted to do full time. So there were these cues that I kept taking. And then finally, after about 4 to 5 years of professional experience, I decided it was a good time to formally consider applying to business schools.
I see. I see. One big hurdle for some people, not for everyone, is the GMAT, taking that exam. Was that difficult for you?
um, yes. I mean, I so wish I had taken the GMAT back when I was at undergrad, because you're so used to kind of solving problems, right?
Indeed.
I mean,
Indeed.
let me rephrase, right? I would say when I was at IIT, I was playing around with numbers a lot more. I was still in that mindset of like exam preparation. I was giving exams every semester. So I think there's a mindset that's required to give the exam, and I so wish I had gotten done with GMAT back in undergrad. What happened as I started working was you get used to using, say, Excel to do math, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, the muscle that I had used to kind of do calculations mentally kind of has become weak, right? So when I decided to prepare for GMAT, about 4 or 5 years into my work I did have to push myself to sit down, start studying again. So it was a bit of a shock, because I was no longer in that mind frame of giving exams. So initially it did feel a little difficult, but I think once I got into the groove, once I knew there was a deadline that I had set for myself, by which I had to clear the exam, I think the old competitive exam Prateek kind of kicked in, and then I was kind of enjoying. I was going with the flow. Ended up taking GMAT twice. Um, um, and fortunately I had budgeted a buffer period so that if I had to give it again, I would be able to do so. But yeah, it did require a bit of a kickstart in the beginning, and fortunately I was able to get that. My partner and I both decided to start the GMAT prep together, so we kept each other kind of um, true to the process. I ended up joining a weekend coaching class, which kind of helped me get into a routine. So I knew every Saturday and Sunday I had to go sit in that class with the teacher kind of giving me tips on how to do better. And that kind of helped me get into the rhythm.
Oh, how long did it take you to get back into that mindset of being the Pratik who so enjoyed taking these exams?
Yeah, I mean, it did take me a month and a half or so, right, Michael? Like when I was focusing on GMAT a little more over the weekends, spending about 30 to 45 minutes every morning before I started work, it did like take some time getting into the routine. I would say within a month and a half, I was back to enjoying the process. And once I did, then of course the exam didn't get any easier, but the preparation did. So yeah, and then I was able to kind of push through for another month, a month and a half, and get the exam out of the way. Um,
Mm.
yeah, the one thing I did probably do incorrectly was take a couple of weeks of a gap. Once I built momentum, I kind of probably became a little complacent, and I was like, now we're in the groove. Took a couple of weeks of a gap, and I realized that was a big mistake. So then I made sure once I was back at it, I did not stop till I had given both my attempts. It's so important to build momentum and just power through the exam. And for me, it was important to get the exam out of the way before I could focus on other aspects, such as the essay or talking to my recommenders about like getting the LORs in. I just wanted to be done with the logistics of GMAT before I could then move on to the more creative part of the application, which required a lot more thinking versus introspection versus GMAT, which was more of like get into a framework, get into a routine, knock the exam out, and then you're done, right? Like I felt there were two slightly distinct parts of the process.
Indeed. Pratik, regarding the application itself, did you require a long time, a period of introspection as you attacked the essays?
Um, Yeah, Michael. So, a quick context here. I applied to business schools across 2 years, and I think I took slightly different approaches in both my applications. So, the first time I applied, I kind of approached the applications partly with this frame of mind of trying to figure out what the school wants to hear, right? I really wanted to get in. I wanted to put my best story out there. But then I was also kind of constrained by this need to kind of appeal to the admissions committee, try and speak to a bunch of people and figure out what worked in their essays. Worked with an MBA consultant who kind of guided me in a way. He had guided a bunch of other applicants in the past with very similar profiles. And I think I did enjoy the process, and I did find a story that was very, very personal to me, and kind of was a good reflection on why I could probably do with an MBA at this point of time. But I still felt the authenticity in that essay was not as much as I would have loved, right? There was still an element of trying to appeal to the admissions committee, which, I mean, you have to do ultimately, right? Because they need to kind of see that you belong in that MBA classroom. But that's the approach I took in the first year. And the amount of time I spent introspecting was probably a little less, whereas the amount of time I spent finding the right words, the right phrases, the right way of putting it across was a little more. Come second year, I was reapplying to HBS, and this time I decided to be a lot more myself, I would say. I mean, to the extent that I would go out on a run, I would carry a piece of paper with me and a pen. I would go for a run. I would sit at some point right after the run where my endorphins were kicking in, my mind was racing, my creativity was high, and I would pen down, say, something for 15 minutes, and I would come back. And I used this process, which was like spread out over a much longer time, to kind of find my story and put that across in my essay. And I just felt it resonated with me a lot more. Not only was I able to kind of find the right words to put that story in, I was able to talk about it so much more passionately when I had to finally interview with HBS. So I feel the second time around, I did spend a lot more time introspecting, and rather than trying to find the right word and dot the I's and cross the T's, I was more so focused on digging deep and actually putting out a story that mattered to me, even if it felt an extremely unconventional one. So that's how it was the second time when I reapplied to HBS.
I see. The Harvard Business School application essay is extremely broad, as well as unlimited in word count, unlike any of the other business schools. Do you feel that that particular application was therefore easier or harder than for the other schools?
I think what made the application easy was I was talking about myself, and no who better to kind of, or what better question to kind of help you share your life story, right? All of us have really personal experiences that most of the times we're not able to put into words, but that application allowed me to really dig deep and find what drives me and what I would want to do to create an impact in the world. So I think because it was such a personal question, it was very easy for me, because I didn't have to think too hard about what really drives me. I just had to find the right uh, examples to back that up. What made it tough, though, was making sure I don't go on and on about it, right? Like the essay, even though, and I think they've changed this now, but back then I could put it in as many words as I wanted, but I did know that there's only so much attention that I can grab from someone who is reading multiple essays every day. So I did want to make sure I had the story put across in a very crisp and concise manner. So I think that was the tricky part of distilling a bunch of my experiences down to a few really high impact experiences that kind of tied into the core theme of my essay without like going on and on about things that I could probably talk for hours about. So yeah, that's where it kind of got tricky for me. What helped was leaving enough time after I had written my third or fourth draft to share that essay with people who knew me and people who had in the past, like alumni from the school, right? So that allowed me to kind of weed away the fluff in the essay and sharpen it down to things that people who probably don't know me or people who really knew me well, like things that resonated with both sets of people. So yeah, there were ways to kind of work around with the tougher aspects, but I thoroughly enjoyed the process of writing that HBS essay.
Oh, that's a very unusual thing to hear from people who
Mhm.
found it, most of whom find it to be quite arduous. What about the process of obtaining letters of recommendation? Did that present you with any difficulties?
Um, I hmm, I did have to think quite hard, Michael, about who to approach for my letter of recommendation. But fortunately for me, I had spent enough time with people who had worked closely with me and who had been my mentors within the organizations I'd worked that I kind of had a sense of who to approach once I wanted to kind of go ahead and submit those LORs. Um, Also, I was extremely clear with the people I was working with that hey, I would love to go ahead and get an MBA at some point. So it was not that I was second guessing approaching them. Like we had a very clear line of communication that at some point I would be applying to business school, and hence I was able to approach, say, the head of office for a letter of recommendation because I didn't have to play that scenario in my head 10 times as to, oh my God, are they going to be shocked that I'm going to business school in that moment? Are they going to probably say no? If they say yes, will they write the best recommendation possible? So I kind of had that covered by being really transparent once I had spent some time in the firm. So yeah, that way it was kind of fairly seamless in terms of who I would get my LOR from and how I would approach them. I mean, the one time I did run into trouble was again going back to approaching the same person as my partner was approaching. And of course, that person decided to write the LOR for my partner. And I'm still pretty bummed about that. But well, the LOR stayed in family, so I'm okay with that. But yeah, I think that aside, the big learning there was let the people who you might want to get an LOR from, let them know early, let them know very candidly that you would love to get them to kind of recommend you to business school, and hopefully that sorts out the LOR bit. I did make sure I gave them enough time before the deadline to put the LOR in, because these I mean, everyone's busy, and I am so grateful that they took the time out to write the LOR for me, but just wanted to get my bases covered and avoid any last minute glitches. So I kept communicating with them. I kept kind of nudging them to take it up as soon as they could. But I'm pretty glad that I was able to get those in without any last minute glitches.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you did too. I hope bridges have been repaired about that LOR from Prateek. Harvard's famed case study method is quite intimidating to many people. Were you intimidated when you encountered that style of pedagogy?
Okay, yeah. Let me pause and gather my thoughts, because the case method is an extremely interesting way of kind of delivering education, if you were to put it. But I was extremely caught off guard once I sat in that classroom. I was intimidated. I did feel like a deer right in front of a headlight, trying to figure my way around this classroom for, I think, two reasons, right? One, the way I had received education for the first half of my life, more than the first half of my life, was very different, right? Whether it be at school, whether it be at IIT, the focus was for you to kind of go sit in a classroom and have the professor come in and deliver a lot of education. I mean, deliver the lecture to you, right? So you are sitting in a more absorbing kind of an environment with a mindset of like taking in things what the professor is throwing at you, and then going ahead, practicing it practically, theoretically, and then getting to an exam and scoring well on the exam. Now, the case method kind of flips it on its head. The way you're kind of learning in the classroom is not by sitting there and absorbing from the professor. Now you are sitting there and learning by participating in a discussion and absorbing from your peers. So the professor is there to orchestrate a discussion, but you are the one who has the onus of kind of coming in with your experiences, speaking in when you feel you have value to add, but all the other time being on your toes, making sure you're following the discussion, making sure you're kind of debating in your head some of the points that your peers are making, and then forming your own opinion, right? So that was a very different way of learning, and of course, it took me some time getting used to it. So that was one. It was just like the way I was kind of learning was flipped on its head. Two, of course, it's a very fast paced environment. I came to business school. Of course, there was a spring in my step, but I was forced to kind of sprint and not just spring around, I would say, right? Like from day one, you have so much happening. You have to prepare for your classes, go into the class, get into these discussions. As soon as you're out of your classes, you're meeting with people, trying to figure out what's happening where, how, like, where's the next party, where's the next event, who are the people who you want to connect deeper with. Once that's done, you go back home, you're preparing for the next day, you're thinking about recruitment. So there's just so much happening. And in the middle of this curated chaos, you need to take a step back and get used to participating in the case method. And I'm like, okay, the method might be intimidating, but so is everything else outside that method. So, yeah, okay, that normalizes it. And then you learn to swim pretty soon because you're in the deep and you have to survive. So yeah, it was pretty intimidating. But when we got a hang of it, when I got a hang of it, it became a lot more enjoyable. I'm a numbers guy, Michael. Like I was spending 3 hours preparing a case in my first month. I was spending 20 minutes preparing a case in my final semester, and that's a skill. I feel, right, like going through say 20 pages of information to be able to kind of participate in a discussion and make points that are relevant, I think is a skill I picked up across the 2 years. So yeah, such tidbits of like growth that I observed, but of course it gets easier, you get better, some stop caring, but I kind of thoroughly enjoyed that.
That is very fascinating. It's very interesting to know that. Prateek, here's a big question. For what you want to do you feel Harvard Business School prepared you adequately for this next stage in your life?
Absolutely, Michael. I came into HBS with a very clear objective, right? Like as I was writing my essay, as I distilled my short and long-term goals, I kind of narrowed down on this immediate goal of wanting to do something entrepreneurial in the business of sport and kind of use sport for social impact. So I'm someone who grew up playing multiple sports. And as someone who was extremely deeply entrenched in books, sports were not just my escape from academics. They helped me kind of build a whole different set of my personality, which I felt helped me along at different points in my journey. So sport was very central to my growth and the reason why I was at HBS. And I wanted to kind of go ahead and I set this North Star for myself to, in the long run, give every kid in India access to sport, and in the short term, be a little more entrepreneurial to figure out where I could kind of um, get into this business of sport. So I was very clear about my goal coming into HBS. And for that very reason, I feel when I look back at those 2 years and see whether HBS adequately set me up, I would say absolutely yes. Having that clarity on goal helped me focus more on the process of getting to that goal rather than trying to figure out what I need to do once at HBS. Um, so that said, I think HBS prepared me in, I think, three ways. The first was even before I got to HBS, as soon as I got in, I felt a renewed confidence and a renewed shot in my arm that, yes, I mean, my dreams are now, I'm one step closer to achieving dreams that seem like really distant in the past. So I think the confidence that came with just knowing that I would be walking down at some of the tunnels, if I were to use that reference at HBS, was extremely, extremely reassuring. So confidence was one, and I think that kind of got tested during the 2 years because it's very real to feel intimidated, to feel whether you're at the right place. But I think through that test of fire, I walk out feeling absolutely confident that I'm on the path to achieving my goals. So confidence, I think, is the first. The second thing that I feel HBS offered me was some of the core skills that I felt I lacked. So I mentioned that I wanted to get an MBA to feel a lot more comfortable using, say, the business lingo, right? And over 2 years, given the focus that HBS puts on coming to class, being prepared, participating in a case discussion, I felt I built a lot of those core financial, accounting, um, macro eco skills. And I also built a lot of skills from subjects that I've never associated squarely with business, but I feel are so important as I kick off my career post business school. Now, whether it be attending a course on war and peace, which uses a bunch of conflicts in the past to draw on leadership, negotiation, and strategy lessons. I, in my wildest dreams, never imagined attending a course on war and peace. But as unfortunate as it is, we're living in times of massive conflicts. And for me to be able to knowledgeably talk about some of these conflicts, but also look at them from the point of view of how leadership is approaching them is kind of one of the most unexpected skills I picked up while at school. So I think those gaps in my skill sets are what HBS pushed me to kind of close over those 2 years. And I think the third piece that HBS helped me with is just the community. It has to be the community of peers and professors that I met that kind of just transformed the tenacity with which I was chasing my dreams. Like when I was coming into HBS, I wanted to work in business of sport, and I was kind of probably blinded by my excitement and passion to work in the industry. But there were enough people who said, you know what, as an international, um, it's going to be so difficult for you to break into the business of sport. Like, you have visa issues, the industry doesn't pay well. How are you going to go and figure out in 2 years to break into an industry you've never worked before, right? And it was only when I got to HBS and I spoke to people who had worked in the industry or people who were chasing equally unconventional jobs that I was able to say, hey, wait, it's okay. I'm not a weirdo who's trying to chase something just driven by or blinded by passion, right? So that helped. The other thing that helped was speaking with some of the professors, and oh boy, I mean, they are the most genuine, and like they want to be there to help you out, uh,
Mm-hmm.
even though they seem like these people who have achieved so much. But you go sit with them, have a coffee, and they're happy to kind of really dive deeper into even the most menial things. There were times when I just wanted to take a job that seemed a lot safer, a lot more conventional, which wasn't in sport. And my professor who teaches, Anita Alberse, who teaches business of entertainment, media, and sport, went on to say, Prateek, if there's something worth doing, then it's worth struggling, right? And I was like, just knowing that there's someone who has your back makes such a huge difference. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
community kind of gave me the assurance that it's okay to graduate without a job. I found my job like 4 months after graduation, which is impossible to imagine if I were back in India. I had to have a job a year before graduating in India. So if I was able to kind of not freak out, I mean, I did freak out at times during those 4 months where I was sitting without a job post graduation. But I think there was this underlying belief that it'll all work out, and if
Mm-hmm.
now then when, and if not me then who, right? I think, and a lot of that reassurance came through the community that I had surrounded myself with at HBS. So yeah, I think HBS more than enough kind of prepared me for things ahead. I think I have a launch pad. I think I have a foot in the industry, and now it's up to me to kind of stick it in and play big. Yeah. So I'm pretty glad that this is a journey I went through.
That's wonderful. Pratik, some schools have a reputation for being cutthroat. Based on what you've said thus far already, it's clear that HBS was not that way for you. Could you give us a sense of what life was like among the other students, both in classroom as well as out?
Yeah. Yeah. I was extremely worried about the social aspect of business schools in general before I stepped onto the campus. I'm an introvert. I do like to work in competitive environments, but I'm also someone who loves to work in a more collaborative environment, right? So, and many a times collaboration and some of these culturally good valued words aren't what you associate, like say with business school or HBS in particular. I was pleasantly surprised in my first year. And I think a lot of the credit for that has to go to the way HBS structures the first year of your education.
Hmm.
You're required to kind of take all your courses with this set of 90 folks. That's what you call your section. And in this required curriculum or the RC year, or the first year, you are day in, day out sitting with those 90 folks, um, discussing some really vulnerable topics with each other in the classroom, which helps kind of break down some of the walls, which I think everyone carries because they're from different countries, different industries, they have different expectations from business school. But also, you see a lot of the other folks kind of both excel but also falter. You see that everyone sitting in that room is as susceptible to pressure, to the unknown as you are. And that just makes everyone in the room so much more human. And you're like, okay, while everyone here wants to do well, everyone here is also just another version of you with a different set of experiences, and I think that helps. So that first year of almost, like, I would say, trial by fire of like making stupid comments in front of your classmates, not being able to answer a cold call too well, all of that kind of helps build some really strong ties. What also helped was connecting with these folks outside the classroom. I mean, I never went in with the goal of wanting to know every single person in my 1,000 people class, but I did want to connect with every single one in this 90% cohort. And the more time I spent, the more I realized there were some people I really resonated with. There were some people I'm like, good to know, but I don't think we match at a values level, and we respect that. So I think these interactions outside the class, for which you have enough time because I was staying on campus, so I didn't really have to like travel half an hour to get there. I could step out of the class, still spend enough time on campus, meeting people, bumping into them in the gym or on my way to a party or just in the garden outside the classroom. And that helps kind of just get to know so many more people at a deeper level. All of this to say, I feel this builds the social fabric of what you get at HBS. And that made it a lot more collaborative for me versus cutthroat. The fact that most of the class gets the same grade kind of helped. So I was not
Oh, really?
one up everyone. I was like, okay, all I need to do is be in the wide middle bucket of the class and then focus on so many other things that HBS has to offer versus just getting the grade. So that helped as well to reduce the competitive edge in the class. Um, so yeah, I did feel a lot more at home as time went on. Um, and I think I also had a slightly different experience as compared to a lot of people. I wasn't recruiting in a very structured way, so I didn't have to I didn't have to step into the shoe of someone who was competing with 100 other HBS folks for, say, a few consulting seats at MBB. I was recruited in a very just in time, unstructured manner. So I was my own competition in a way. So maybe I was also living a slightly different HBS experience. But at no point did I feel that, hey, if I was discussing my sports ambitions with another person who wanted to recruit in the field of sport, were we stepping on each other's toes? We were exchanging notes because, I mean, we were there to help each other rather than worrying about that one seat that opens up at one sports organization and both of us going after that. Somehow I felt I was a lot more secure in kind of having such open discussions rather than cagey about like, wait, we are going for the same thing, and I would rather not show my chips. So yeah, fairly probably collaborative and interesting experience.
Oh, that's fascinating. Prateek, you have now obtained two of the toughest degrees in the world. Please, would you please share with us what would success mean for you from this point forward in your life?
I mean, Michael, when you said that, I'm just letting those words sink in because they do hit me when I think about where I am, and I feel so grateful for the opportunity that I have. That it's many a times. I don't know. It's tough to put in words at times. Like, would I have imagined 15 years ago that I'd be sitting here with some of the toughest experiences in my bag? Probably not. But now that I'm here, it does take some time to sink in. And I'm so grateful for everyone who's helped me get here. But that also makes me realize that I have a once in a lifetime opportunity to go after things that I probably could not have imagined when me and my parents were sitting in that tiny home in Aurangabad as I got into grade one, right? Like, I feel my dreams have kind of been unshackled to an extent, and that almost feels like a responsibility to now chase those dreams. So for me, Michael's success would mean still chasing that North Star that I spoke about, or getting every kid in India access to sport early on in their life. And if I'm able to, in my lifetime, make a dent in the sports industry in India, I would feel I've kind of done justice to the way to all the support that people have given me and to the opportunities that have been granted to me. So that's what I'm chasing. That's what I would love to do in my lifetime. Um, but I also realize that a lot what I have achieved so far, Michael, has come with its own set of sacrifices, and a bunch of them have been on my personal life. I've kind of, including those 2 years that I mentioned in Kota, where I was away from family, friends, I was kind of isolated for 2 years to get into IIT. I mean, those experiences did did carry with it a lot of sacrifice, and I would believe that the next 15 to 20 years for me are also a lot more about just going back and I don't know how to say it, but just being a lot more intentional about the social aspect of my life, about the personal aspect of my life. So for me, success would be finding this balance between achieving my professional goals, which I feel I have the momentum to go ahead and do, but now they'll come without, hopefully, the sacrifice on my personal side. I would love to be associated with my family, give more time to my friends, and also be a little more involved with the society that I stay in now, whether that be going for a group pottery class once every week, driving down to work and catching up with my family. But yeah, I'm still trying to strike that right balance.
Well, it is my great hope that you'll achieve that in very quick order. Prateek, I think you've told us your fascinating story, and I believe it will help a tremendous number of people as they try to decide upon their own educational dreams. So once again, Prateek, I'd like to thank you for coming on with us, for sharing your experiences, for telling us so much about your inner journey as well. And to repeat myself, I believe this will help a great many people. And if there's any way in which I or my partners can assist you in your journey, I hope you won't hesitate to call upon us.
Thank you, Michael. And I think, yeah, thank you so much. And I feel that I mean, there have been so many people who have had a role to play in helping me kind of even be in this position right now to be able to share my story. And for me, being able to touch as many lives as possible, whether as a listener or as someone who can share my story, I think is one of the key reasons that I kind of feel motivated at this point. Of course, everyone has very unique journeys, but I think there are certain generalizable lessons that you can draw from other people's stories. At least that's how I have approached life. And if there's anyone I could kind of hear out or speak to, I would be more than happy to. As people think about the next big steps in their life. And Michael, it's been a pleasure to be able to speak about things that have been extremely personal to me and have been fundamental in making me who I am. So once again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, Prateek, the thanks is reciprocated, and I would like to wish you a very good rest of your day. And and on this start of your professional journey, please keep us apprised. There may indeed be many other things that you may wish to share with our platform audience.
I mean, uh, more than happy to discuss things that I'm working on or that interest me. So, yeah.
Have a good day, Prateek. My very best to you.
Thank you.